there, Dan.
Hey, man. How you doing?
Good.
Good. It's nice to see your face.
It's nice to see yours as well.
So, how's this radio show going?
You know, it's going. It's going. We're slowly picking up steam. We're getting some great guests on, so I'm excited. And starting that Facebook link or the LinkedIn group, trying to get people engaged there to start sharing information with one another. And
Nice.
It's a grassroots effort. Effort.
Well, that's right. I must say, I hadn't registered that you were doing it every day.
Every day, man. It's a daily thing for me. So it's like it's become a little bit of a labor of love in between my day job.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, it's not like you to get excited about an idea.
Never. I'm not. Clearly, you don't know me, Dan. Save the good stuff for later, man. We've only got one person on so far, and they're coming, I'm sure.
Cool.
Nothing against Daniel Bean, by the way. Dan, if you want to feel free to share your camera, by all means, feel free to do so. We'll get started in a little bit. We're a little early here, obviously. People tend to jump on in the first 2 to 3 minutes.
So, how are your stocks treating you? Your stockpile?
My stocks are awesome, meaning not the actual physical. The physical stocks are doing great. The other stocks we're not going to talk about because people will cry. So.
No. Are you having restrictions on the number of products people can buy?
Some are, in fact. I just heard about that. So,
okay.
We'll talk about that in a bit because that's also really good stuff, and I want to make sure we get into it.
Man.
All the good stuff. We're gonna we have to go on.
What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man. How you been?
Yeah, good. Real well, thank you.
Good. How's work from home life treating you?
Oh yeah, it's all good.
There's Claudia.
Hey, Claudia.
You're on mute. Common mistake.
Unmute.
There she is.
I got it. Thank you. I can hear people.
Cool. I'll give it a couple more minutes.
Hey, Nadej is in the house.
Yes, Nadej is here. Nadej, show us your face.
Hello.
There you are.
Hey, Dan. Hey, Claudia. Miss you guys.
It's been ages. How you doing?
Good.
And there's
I'm so glad you guys are speaking. Thanks so much for joining.
It's all good.
There's a brutal mid-sentence meeting.
Right? Yeah, mid-sentence. I like to sometimes freeze, and then do the movement, even though I didn't actually freeze. Pat finds zero pleasure in that, though. We'll give it a couple more minutes, guys, and then I'll kick this thing off.
I'm just going to grab myself a drink of water.
Sure. So I guess we should count ourselves lucky that we haven't gotten bombed yet. Photobombed or whatever. Zoom bombed. That's now become like a thing.
Oh, really?
That Dwayne talked about the other day. It's actually like a thing. Like it was on the nightly news thing. And I'm like, great. As soon as you guys start talking about that, then everyone's going to know about it. Hey, Allie. Allie's under Nadej's name, which is kind of weird.
I don't know why that is.
I don't know.
I have special powers.
Yeah, are you? You're an imposter.
I just want to be you.
And there's Steve. Look, wow, I like it when UK people show up. They're also polite, and they also put on their cameras. We have another Nadej. How's that possible? Nadej, are you everyone?
I don't know what's happening.
I
just clicked on the link.
I am Nadej.
Following
Is this a Negan situation?
It's a movement.
This is like See, Fiona came as herself. She didn't come dressed up as Nadej. I think Nadej, is it possible if you forwarded it to people that it...
Oh, that's what happened.
Oh my God, they have your name.
Yeah, everyone is Nadej. Well, I've already got the title for this episode. Cool. We're only 2 minutes past. We'll give it like 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we'll kick this bad boy off.
Where's your holding music? Where's the jingle?
I don't know. We need holding music. Actually, that's a good point.
Come on, man.
Can you do that?
No, I can't do that through the system. I can definitely do it through this, which, like, to be frank, was powerful enough. So every night, I'll get into it in a minute.
Dan, you could just play guitar. You probably have
That
one
was
near, don't
ominous.
you?
Yeah.
I've got one over the room, but it sounds
Ukulele?
weird to. No, guitar to hand.
Give me 1 second, guys. I'm just gonna close the shades here to get a little better lighting.
I love how we've
Actually,
all got
I don't
one.
look good under any lighting, so it doesn't really matter.
You don't look good. You look great.
And here we go. All right. I think we can kick this thing off. We are 3 minutes past. Hello and welcome to Search from Home. I don't know who's got a something blaring in the background, but if rules of the game, if you're on, by all means, show your camera. If you're in Nadej, well, you're everyone. Because if you all look at your names, you're Nadej. I think that when she invited folks, that might have actually brought her name over. So do me a favor. If you're not Nadej, raise your hand. No. If you're not Nadej, go ahead and at the top right of your screen, there should be 3 little dots, I think. At least there are when I'm looking at you. And you can actually rename yourself. So put your name in so we know who you are. Because it'd be great to actually refer to you as something else than Nadej.
I like that Baruch is Nadej too.
I know.
Yes, Baruch is Nadej as
Baruch
well.
is Nadej as
go
well.
new
Change your
Nadej.
name, Baruch. Everyone is Nadej. I have no idea how everyone is Nadej minus like people have been on previously. So for everyone who's watching this later, they have no idea what we're talking about.
Nope.
Because it doesn't show everyone's faces in the recording. So I am incredibly ecstatic today to have an amazing group of individuals. We're getting 2 for the price of 1, by the way, guys. It's free webinar, but we love you nonetheless. Dan Patmore and Claudia Higgins from Argos, arguably one of the great e-commerce companies out of the UK.
No, there's no argument about it.
There's no you're right. There's absolutely no argument, nor is there wit on this call. So there'll be no more wit from me. I'll tell you that. But I know that Dan's brought enough for all of us. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. I'm really, really happy to have you and looking forward to hearing how things are going. So let's start off first with, hey, Dan, rename yourself because now you're Nadej. I don't know how you... You're Nadej now.
Yeah, no, I know. I did it on purpose.
Oh, is this the whip that we were told to expect?
Got it. Thank God Claudia's here to interpret because I can't understand a thing this guy is saying or doing.
Yeah, I'm one comedy tie away from being a real cool party, eh?
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Let's start off. I mean, give us a sense of what the world's like on the other side of the pond. I know we have some of our Conductor friends from there as well on the call today, but for many of us who are in the U.S., what's going on over there? Where are you guys based out of? And give us a sense of what's going on. Claudia, you want to start?
Yeah, so we're the whole team based from our own homes, about an hour and a half north of London at the moment. We were pretty well set up to do that anyway, so it hasn't been too difficult of a transition for us. I think it's fair to say that this whole pandemic has definitely changed things in our business. We have seen a huge increase in visits and sales for people preparing themselves for being at home, and then with a lot of places on the high street closing, the fact that we've got delivery and click and collect within the supermarket propositions means that we're one of the retailers that was best placed to be able to adapt and cope with the changes. And then being owned by a supermarket as well, obviously they're seeing massive panic buying and now a lot more kind of eating from home, not cooking. So there's a lot more interest there, but we're not as involved with the parent company. But yeah, it's been a transition for sure.
How about you, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I think transition's the word, right? You go 3 weeks ago, Friday night, I went out, went to a gig with my brothers, had a good few beers. Next day, out with the kids, go and watch some sport. And 3 weeks later, that feels like a long time ago, you know. I think Claudia's right. We were well disposed to working from home. In fact, the day that Sainsbury's asked us all to start working from home, I was actually working at home that day anyway, because it's a regular part of the gig, right? I think what you're seeing is everyone on slightly different change curves depending on their home setup, who they got in their lives, and all of that. And it just makes sense. It's change, isn't it? It's cool though to see how people are using, Zoom and Teams and all those other cool things to keep innovating, keep talking to each other. If anything, I'm actually speaking to my family more than ever before, which is cool. It's a good place to be.
How where are you situated, Dan?
So I'm in a small town called Newport Pagnell. It's only about 5 miles away from the office. Claudia is about 5 miles in the other direction from the office. Most of us are pretty local to the office. So, we're not talking population like London at all. What Milton Keynes must be, I don't know, just shy of 300,000? I think, Claudia?
Oh, I think it's less than. Well,
so it's like 250.
Between 200 and 300, I'd say.
Yeah, somewhere between the two. Sarah's here now as well. Hello, Sarah. So a big enough town. And it's all good. What's nice for me actually is I can, if the wind's blowing in the right direction, I can hear sheep. there are stables and a farm just down the other end. So our garden doesn't have any grass in it, but we've got a big patch of grass down at the end that can get the kids out on their bikes each evening. And if we're lucky, we can go and see some sheep and horses, which is cool.
Nice. So you guys have a little bit of space to spread out, which is kind of nice. Claudia, you do as well?
Yeah. We've got a decent sized garden out the back, which is great because we've got 2 dogs, so it means that we can let them out. We've got 1 government approved outing per day. And the dogs sometimes need more than that, so it's good to have a bit of grass out there for them.
Wow, so explain that to us, because I don't think we have not hit that inflection point yet
so
of a government outing or government approved outing. That sounds like I think we call it recreation time in the prison system.
Yeah, pretty much. We're allowed out for exercise once per day, and we're also allowed out to go and get supplies for any kind of medical reason to leave the house. But apart from that, it's not supposed to go anywhere. You're not supposed to, for instance, put the dogs in the car and drive 10 minutes up the road to go somewhere a bit more open. Like, that's classed as unnecessary travel.
And have you guys bumped into like law enforcement who actually are like enforces this stuff? Or
that's a bit of a conversation that's sort of hitting our news a lot more today in terms of the different police forces around the country enacting on the rules in slightly different ways, being a bit inconsistent on it. I haven't seen any presence, but then actually I left the house to go somewhere populated for the first time today in over a week, but haven't actually, to the point where the little high street where I live had ducks wandering down it, which was quite cool.
I haven't seen. I was just gonna say I haven't seen any police while I've been out and about. But my parents are up in Whitby, which is on the Yorkshire coast. It's quite a tourist destination, and it's been quite heavily policed up there to stop kind of people day tripping out to Whitby to walk along the beach or something like that. So there are areas in the country where there's a lot of police presence at the moment, just trying to keep people in check.
How's that affecting? Go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, so just for context, sort of the first weekend after like pubs and restaurants, etc., were starting to close, like the national parks around the country, whether they were beachside or mountains or lakes, whatever, we're seeing just huge volumes of visitors because it happened to coincide with, I guess, what must have been one of the first first weekend of spring, in fact, it was. And like Snowdonia, the biggest peak in Wales, had its biggest weekend for years in terms of visitors. So things have had to sort of keep adjusting as people are realizing that social distancing means actually staying at home.
Yeah.
Been hit with a bunch of retargeting ads from the NHS today, basically going stay at home and save lives, which is good to see because people just haven't been getting the message.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like we're in a very, we're in a very different place in New York in that we have not merch. You got someone hopping up on your head over there, and it's not the cat today. We've been noticing in New York, obviously they've been giving us more wide berth in terms of like in the city itself to actually go out and like they closed down a portion of Park Avenue on the weekend, which is kind of counterintuitive when you think about it, because, being the epicenter and everything, people aren't doing the best job of social distancing. I mean, it is weird. Like you definitely do walk by people, and even someone walking their dog, I'll move or someone else will move. Not that I even get out that frequently. I've probably only been out of my house once in the past week, twice maybe, with the exception of like going downstairs to pick up packages, which brings me to my point now. And this will move us closer to e-commerce. How is your supply chain working right now? Are you guys, are packages coming to you guys? Are you able to make shipments? What's that working? How is Argos doing that? Like, what's the process there? And is that a concern for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. What was super interesting last week is how the business's operating model was, I guess, revolutionizing each day to kind of move into this. So for those of you who don't know, Argos operate on we've got about 1,000 locations across the UK. We, I guess, were the pioneers of click and collect in the UK in terms of our ability to actually, the moment you reserved the product, it was there, it was yours. You were never going to have any of those problems you hear about where people have got an item reserved and then they can't actually find it. All they're instantaneous, basically. So huge store state around the UK. I think we used to say, and I don't think this is necessarily true in an Amazon world, but that we shifted more non-food around the UK than anybody else. But I expect that's probably not quite true anymore. But from a sort of distribution across our network point of view, we have closed all standalone stores. So traditionally, a lot of our Argos real estate is in sort of out of town shopping centres. So you get half a dozen super large stores. Those have all shut. What we do have are a lot of store in stores. So through that connection with the supermarkets, you'll get a lot of Argos concessions within them. They remain open, but what we've moved to is mandatory prepay. So you can't walk in, reserve at that point in time and purchase. You have to have already purchased the item online, and you're literally going there as a collection point.
Oh, wow.
And those sort of changes have been occurring sort of within days of each other. Our distribution normally, we've had a big hub and spoke model. So the big stores operating as a hub for the sort of small provincial stores nearby. What they've been doing is essentially using those hubs as additional distribution points. So the day after the stores were closing, all the staff were still going in to essentially wind down that store and make sure they could move the stock so it could keep moving around the supply chain. So one thing our business has always done very well, I think does even better now it's connected to a supermarket, is move stuff around. So actually it's not been, certainly from my perspective, and I'm coming at this quite naively, it's not been a big concern. Now, I think there are lots and lots and lots of people who haven't been sleeping very much to make that the case.
Sure.
But, at that point of being part of a digital team, trying to make sure that, we keep performing, that's all been well in hand. I mean, tied to that means there's obviously a lot of work going on, updating things like Google My Business with stores that are temporarily closed, changing our store opening times on the site. Each day is more types of our units have been closing. And obviously from a trading perspective, putting a lot more messaging around what people can expect, because we have been hammered for home gym, home office, in particular bread makers, coffee makers, thermometers, freezers, all of that stuff. Obviously, thermometers are one of the first things, and I'm sure it's been similar for you guys out there. But, as lockdown has been coming, home gym went really quick, and before people had realised why it'd be such a big draw for people. So if you want to buy a pair of dumbbells in the UK right now, you're going to struggle. Amazon, all they've got is stuff that has potentially got a couple of months lead time or massive price inflation on it. Same on eBay, Argos. There is stock. It's patchy, but it's been hammered. There's been an awful lot of changing how we're merchandising on the site as well. I realise I'm just monologuing now, but I'm going to carry on going.
No, this is awesome. This is
great. No, yeah, keep going.
This is exactly where we want to go, man. And it's so funny you bring that up, because I literally was downstairs in the package room like 2 nights ago, and I hear on the phone a guy go like, and again, I'm in an 800 unit building. Baruch's in the same building over there, and the package guy
love
goes,
that you make a point of telling everyone that.
Oh no, I'll constantly tell.
We say it once an episode.
Once an episode. It's an Easter egg in the episode. Everyone's supposed to drink when this all becomes a drinking game later.
I'll just jump in here. So yes, in New York now we have every day at 7 p.m. we following something similar that happened in Europe by everyone clapping outside to many of our people who work at the service industry, our doctors, our nurses. And so Stephan, he created in his balcony, there's like a whole party happening.
It's not a party, it's just one small
Well, you're the only one who has it. The entire Upper East Side is like singing New York, New York. So so we're kind of like having fun with it.
Are you having to pretend that you don't know him when you're wandering around the building?
I don't know him.
Making all that noise.
Yeah.
He actually told me about the neighbors upstairs that have been making all the noise. They seem to have a moving company because they move stuff around every night, and it's my wife and I are wondering who these people are. Like, we've never seen them, but we hear them, right? And so Baruch actually got a chance to see them because his vantage point is far above me. Anyway, point is, the guy downstairs who's at the package room, getting back to where we were before, I hear him on the phone go, "What? You want us to bring it up to you?" "Yeah, it's a 50-pound dumbbell. It might be a while." And these are poor guys in the package room just trying to like manage if you imagine what holiday time looks like in a building, where everyone is sending packages and they're just overwhelmed in boxes. These guys are there and they're like, "Yeah, we'll get it to you when we can." You hear the guy go like, "Yeah, I'll come down and get it." And I go, "Dude, did a guy really order a 50-pound dumbbell?" So I get that. And also on Nextdoor, which is a weird, interesting app if anyone's paying attention to it. If you have it in the US, it's a social app that lets you see what your neighbors are talking about. And you have to validate that you actually live there to actually become part of the community. And a lot of people have been saying thermometers actually, where can I get a thermometer? It's impossible. I'm looking, I'm like, really? Thermometers? So there are some things, it's funny you're bringing this stuff up, Dan. We've definitely, I'm seeing it personally. And I'm definitely seeing it with clients that they're running into similar shortages and logistical problems. Claudia, what's your take on all this? In other words, like, are there any other things you're seeing spike or things that are interesting? Also, I good point, Dan, about the idea of being a store in a store, like a Bed Bath & Beyond, for example, in the US has a Harmons in it, which is pharmaceutical. So then the question is, are you allowed to keep that store open because there's a pharmacy in it, which is deemed an essential business, versus the rest of Bed Bath & Beyond would not be deemed a essential business. So that's kind of an interesting point too, is the idea of, will we see brick and mortars combine to be essential, non-essential in order to always be open?
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because going back even just 5 years, I think we'd have had to have been entirely delivery based at this point. It's I think Sainsbury's bought us in 2016, I want to say, or is that earlier than? Oh, I shrug. But certainly within the last 5 years, Sainsbury's bought us, and there was a short pilot scheme before that where we were putting concessions or like mini Argos stores within their supermarkets. We had kind of a partnership going on, and the acquisition grew out of that. I think before that, we wouldn't have been in anywhere near as strong a position to keep parts open, and I don't think we were necessarily ordered to close our standalone stores, but the company decided to do it to protect employees and to protect the public, but being able to combine pickup with sort of the one place that people are likely to be actively going out to visit has been a great way of us being able to help customers where they are rather than require them to come to another location. I'm just trying to open something that will help me to answer your question about things that are spiking. We have been looking at it, but it seems to be things spiking that you wouldn't necessarily have associated with this kind of situation. There's a lot of things like paint, like people taking the opportunities to do some renovation projects that they've maybe been putting off for a long time.
That's the thing. If you think about it, we were talking about this immediately, which is making our environment as nice as we can. You're spending all your time at home, you know, whether that's storage stuff, taking on that DIY project you've been avoiding, because actually in terms of the essential, non-essential, to date, hardware stores are considered essential. Because if your boiler goes, you get a leak, whatever, you know, you need to be able to patch things up, do some plumbing, what have you. So actually those stores, like we've got B&Q, a big hardware store here, they're still open.
Yeah.
Are you guys focusing any time on like early stage content at this point, or are you just focusing on like product related stuff? Or are you using this opportunity to say like, hey, should we create content around like DIY type stuff? Does that make sense for you guys, or where are you spending a lot of your time?
So, I mean, across our digital business is spending a lot of time just updating that core journey, because there are so many messages to be updated. You know, whether that's just removing click and collect from every bloody page on the site, or the amount of badging that's having to go on. One of the things that's been a big win for us as an SEO team is traditionally we've had a challenge of when products go out of stock, they disappear. So you end up with a 404, and people have never known whether that's out of stock permanently or internally. We've never known whether that's out of stock for the long term, permanently, or just on a short-term basis. But the trading guys we've been working really closely with, they've got some new functionality so they can actually badge out of stock. So you can manage the customer expectation. They're not trying to add it to their basket, but it's keeping categories live for us. Our actual content team this is a huge production period for them. They're working on a lot of content to do with home at this time of year, and outdoor stuff, as you'd expect. And that stuff is carrying on in earnest. From my perspective, it hasn't changed where we've been focusing on content at this point. But I think you're right, Pat. I think it will have to at some point. I think the big thing for us, as we sort of mentioned at the top, is the volumes we've been getting, partly thanks to our scale and model, are just obscene.
Yeah.
So actually, as an SEO team, we can just kick back with some mojitos at the minute, because we're ranking well, and the traffic is phenomenal. You know, we are a mature brand in the UK, and drink responsibly, by the way. We are a mature brand in the UK, and our homepage traffic has been up like around 50%. You know, that's the sort of thing where keeping it flat would be great, but you know, you're going actually almost doubling it for the time of year is just bonkers. So there hasn't been huge amounts of need for quick response. What we are doing as a team is being really proactive on, right, we're monitoring all those areas using Searchlight by Conductor, in fact. True story.
You didn't need to do a plug there. That's not the point here, Dad, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
It's not the point, but it's true. And I'll take every opportunity to be rude to you, so I should probably be polite as well. What we've been doing is trying to highlight categories that have had huge flux and just keep a super close eye on them. We're reviewing everything that we know has been reacting, because you know, there are some things like Nintendo Switch, for example, has been having huge spikes, but there's a supply problem across the planet on that. You know, Nintendo were the first company to come out and say there's going to be disruption. So there's not so much we can do on that, but across those home categories, you know, those DIY missions that Claudia's talking about, it's keep a good eye on these things.
You know what actually might be interesting about that, and I just thought about it when you said this, Dan. So thank you. I'm wondering if it's not worth looking at. Well, we don't know if it's any good yet. I haven't said it. I'm wondering if there isn't a way to look at some of the things that are in low supply. So immediately when I thought low supply, I thought about Purell, right? Purell is something that's running into low supply in the US, everywhere in the world. And so people have been forced to coming up with their own. Now, do I think someone's going to make a Nintendo Switch on their own? No. But would searches for alternatives to Nintendo Switch, alternative searches, alternative to that, other systems now get undue, like, okay, if I'm going to be at home for a month, 2 months, and I really wanted a Nintendo Switch, do I switch? Do I choose something else, right? And do I go with the alternative? And so the question then becomes, like, the whole concept of serving up either alternative content that gives you the 5 best or types of things like that give you alternative options, especially in a time and place where supply is limited. And then the additional to that is, what about the idea of serving up, you know, users also asked for, rather than those 404 pages or the product not in stock. You obviously have a product not in stock, but then, you know, I think there are certain companies do a great job of making sure they show you what else is out there. You know, couldn't get that brand of dumbbell, there's this as an option.
Yeah, I mean, look, cross-sell, upsell is always huge in retail. So for most e-com businesses, you'd hope they had some level of that in place anyway. But yeah, if they haven't, now's the time to go for that. But I think
but especially with the supply, like if there's a way to tie that to supply really quick, that would be interesting. And it'd be interesting to see if you could actually figure out, maybe even in Google Trends, if alternative terms, because Google Trends is kind of the only thing we've been using recently to try and figure out what's going on. Speaking of which, also back to Claudia and to Dan, and Dan, I want you to finish your point. What are you guys using to try and keep up with it? Is your internal search that you're digging through a lot recently to see what the heck's happening?
Yeah, I mean, internal search is huge. But back to your idea you're having of talking about 5 alternatives to Switch, the internet's flooded with that content already. So what's the point? You know, you think we've had the BuzzFeed top 5, top 12, all these bloody random numbers people pick for that content. So, I mean, I get the concept completely, but I would, I'm not sure what the idea is now, but I'd want people to be a bit more interesting than that, because otherwise it's just noise, isn't it? I mean, you might do well for people that are already in your ecosystem, and that would be a good reason to create it. But in terms of generating more visibility for your brand, for me, should Argos pretend to be BuzzFeed? I mean,
right. No, I get that. And I'm not proposing that, but I think it's more about the ecosystem of, you've already got people coming to you looking for this stuff. Do I think it's going to rank great? I don't know, because at the end of the day, I think if you're actually basing it right now on supply and what's actually out there, I think people are going to link to it. I mean, I hate to say it. I think there'll be a ton of links to that content. And I think, you know, you're right. There's a bunch of crap out there about the alternatives, but in a time and place where, you know, it's great. There's an article from like 5 months ago about what the alternatives to Nintendo Switch are, but it's completely irrelevant in a world where I can't acquire them. Right. Yeah. So you could, based on supply, actually create something that's relevant for today. I'm not saying that's your number one SEO initiative by any means, guys. I would not prioritize this. I'm just caveating that this is an interesting time to think about alternatives.
I wouldn't. I think it's a shit idea. But and
that's the show. Thanks so much for joining us, Dan. Claudia, feel free to join us anytime.
You knew what you were signing up to when you asked me to do this. And actually, why we thought we'd need any other people in a room other than you and I, Stephan, I don't know. So I apologise, Pat and Claudia. You're both very intelligent, capable people, and everyone's having to listen to us two for things. So maybe there should be splinter shows.
I'll mute now.
Look, we've got people leaving. He's just walked off. He's had enough. Yeah. Did you hear what he said? He said, He said the bad poo word. Right, sorry. If you're merchandising your site properly, that's what I was going to say. If you can merchandise your site, if you've got the capability to do that, to promote products, to badge product effectively, you can do all of that stuff in real time anyway, if you are a business at scale with that right technology. So again, it might not necessarily be about going to need to do a bunch of new stuff, but thinking about those basics really, and sweating them really hard. Are we telling customers what we need to tell them in the right places? Can I avoid a customer having to click on that PDP? You know, if someone lands on a lister, can I tell them just, you know what, just don't bother. There's no stock for this, and actually be pushing to the top the stuff that the stuff that there is stock of. Because obviously a lot of people tell you it's all rules based on their site, which I'm going to call bull on, because what business is going to allow an algorithm to plug the product for them? Every business is greedy and wants to push the stuff that's got the most margin. So most businesses will be able to interfere with what's appearing where on their listers. So just use that and sweat it really hard, which I think is one of the things our business has done really well.
That's a great point.
Not to piss all over your ideas, Stephan.
No, it's fine. Trust me, most people do that every day. So you're acting as if we don't talk every day, but I'm used to this deprecation. Claudia, the nicer one.
Now, don't be fooled. She's politer, but she is much more devastating.
Okay. Well, I know she's devastatingly smart, which is why I'm going to ask her this. So what are you using to stay ahead? So are you mining your internal search terms? Are you looking at Google Trends? Are there some things you're doing to kind of understand the sentiment? And I guess in this case, you know, looking especially at what's being bought and what's being sold out and what you guys have left in inventory is probably a huge aspect of this as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, from an SEO point of view, the what's left is not something that we're engaging with particularly closely. I think particularly with a business as large as ours, the supply chain stuff sits so far away from us that by the time the message gets through, the situation may have changed. And with SEO as well, like we just want to make sure that we're ranking as well as we can for the keywords that we care about the most. And maybe the keywords that we care about the most at this moment in time is a shifting thing where we're starting to understand what people are looking for and which of our priority keywords is more pressing at this point in time than others. We're using Search Console for that quite a lot, on-site analytics, looking at which pages people are coming in on, and targeting our optimization to make sure that we're ranking as well as we possibly can for the keywords that are top of everybody's mind at the moment. But whether or not there's product there when they get there is kind of something it's out of our control. What we can do is make sure we're having conversations with people around the business about how they're handling it when that stock isn't there, to make sure that it's not breaking any of our customer journeys, or you know, for example, making pages 404 if there's no stock, because obviously this is the key time that we should be building our performance, making sure that we're really solid, ranking highly for those keywords. And if that's getting disrupted all the time because of supply chain issues, then when the stock does come back in, we're not going to be as placed as well as we could have been in order to capture that interest. So
what are some
really
bets? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go for it. I was rounding up.
No, I wanted to know what are some bets that you think, like based on what you're now learning, you think will be longer term trends? You know, like the paint, for example, or the, you know, what do you think will help you now inform the next step of the content journey? Maybe there are different types of journeys you're going to think about now, or maybe even different types of personas. I guess the prepper persona just became a real thing for us in a very real way, and we all might have kind of fallen into that persona to one degree or another. I'm probably on it. Yeah, you've seen photos of my stockpile. So yeah, at the beginning, Dan asked me how my stock were doing, and immediately I thought stock market, and then I'm like, oh no, he literally means like the amount of toilet paper I have in my home, which is a normal conversation between Dan and I, even when we don't have a pandemic. So, so what are you learning from this, aside from obviously Dan and my back and forth? What are you learning from this that you think you can take and build stuff on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with having as many customers on a weekly basis as we have is that different people are doing different missions at different points. But I think it's likely that a lot of the missions we're going to be seeing come through in the next weeks and months are likely to have signs that they're there already because of people doing things in different orders. Some people are working from home at the moment. Some people have immediately been furloughed and are moving on to filling their time at home. So we've got people working out how to set up their office station and people looking at how they can decorate their spare room at the same time. So I think just really looking at those shifts in volume versus the last few weeks and also versus previous years, we can see signs of a lot of those. While at the moment we're focusing on the ones that are coming through the most strongly, as we ensure that we're in a good place for those, I think we'll be able to move a bit further down the list and look at things that maybe only small pockets of our customers are doing at the moment that others may start to do later on. An interesting one that's come up is hair clippers. So obviously some people's need for a haircut was really urgent and they started doing that straight away. But yeah,
why do you think Stephan and Pat are wearing hats?
I was about to say, you're reading my mind right now. the haircuts is a growing concern literally over here.
But yeah, so that's something that I think is going to continue to become a pressing issue for different people at different stages over the coming weeks and months, that they're going to have to start to take matters into their own hands with their haircuts. So Zoom meetings, exactly. Yeah. Zoom meetings are going to start to get a lot funnier.
Yeah. And speaking even of just the Zoom meetings, so do you see that? So I think that a lot of companies are going to have to change their work from home policies, depending on which you're in after this, because I think a lot of people are realizing that you can work from home and be just as productive, if not more productive.
Yeah.
Do you guys see that? Yeah. Do you see that that's going to happen in the UK, or do you think that's going to be a global thing? How do you guys feel about that?
I really hope it's a global thing. I think I have some friends in the disabled community, and I think one thing that's really frustrated them is that there's jobs that are now immediately switching to be done from home that they had been told, no, you need to be in the office, you need to do this. When it's really out of their comfort zone, it's out of their, it takes so much from them to have to go and do those things when they can see that it's unnecessary, and suddenly it's something that affects able-bodied people. It's something that we can just make happen. We can put the required things in place so that everybody can just work from home and we can carry on. We've got business continuity. So I'm really hopeful that this brings a lot more flexibility, because apart from the fact that different working styles suit different people in different ways, there's some people who have kind of been shut out of a lot of kinds of work because of their differently able bodies that start to benefit from their brains and their talents in a way that we haven't really allowed them to before.
And that's the thing for me with this. So stepping outside of all of the bad stuff of it is the amount of innovation and the way things are changing. So I don't know if it's started happening for you guys yet, but in the UK, we've got various personal trainers, chefs, authors, actors, people proficient in sign language, sharing content free every day. Now, I think, when you have stuff like this, you'd expect there to be a great outpouring of creativity and hopefully some good innovation coming from it. But seeing the way that actually people who are skilled are stepping up and going, hey, right, this is how I can help people through this weird time. It's great. I was talking to someone earlier on about, I live in a small town where actually there's a greengrocer and butchers that are now doing home deliveries. And they're being really flexible on their model for home delivery in terms of how they're accepting payment, the way in which they're delivering to those customers, the way they're handling it. They're looking after their clients' needs. Doing it with a local pet shop. They have closed, but then they're working out a level of hours for certain customers that they know that's the only way they can buy that stuff. And so whether it's for each of us as humans having to work out what hobbies we actually probably do have time for that we always convinced ourselves we didn't, or that DIY project, or it's a business, working out how the hell to just keep staying sane, keep swimming. And it's that amazing human ability to adapt. And that is the thing that is really cool and really heartening. There's been a lot of talk over the last 4 or 5 years, particularly in the UK and the US, about the community and about how divided everyone is. And actually, across the various suburbs and small towns that make up part of Milton Keynes, there are community groups that are set up and mobilised to flyer people to say, hey, we can help you. You know, there are people putting rainbows that they've coloured in their windows for people that are walking past. There are bear hunts going on. There are people are actually taking much more time to appreciate like some of those key roles that are going on out there. And I think that's creating for me some really positive stuff that you should be looking at rather than watching the news or social media. So I've been using Duolingo a lot, a language app. And there's a great thing that comes up around its interstitials, which is you can learn a language in 15 minutes. What can you learn from social media? And I've basically shut off, I allow myself 5 minutes a day of Facebook at the minute because it was just getting too much.
Yeah.
And I appreciate I'm rambling again. But the point here is some of that innovation that's coming through, whether it's people cooking with stuff that they're not normally used to cooking with, whether it's celebrities actually releasing their audiobooks for free so people have got something to do, people running maths classes remotely, whether it's learning codes from either a big subscription service or an app where you can do it in a few minutes a day. There's so much cool shit going on. And I think, so tied to that point when we were talking before, Stephan, around how to manage and trade your business, I think it's just about trying to take a step back and go, right, what would I normally do in this situation? Go, right, what are people doing? How am I behaving? Because we're all in this. It's not very often you get a trend that literally everyone can relate to, because everyone is being impacted it by some way or another. So, there's been some cool data that's been doing the rounds around how searches have changed on YouTube in Italy. So for whether people are in the UK or the US, it's probably a good idea to go, right, what data is doing the rounds? What trends of the ways people are adapting to this, whether it's singing New York on their balcony and upsetting the neighbors, or whether it's making the delivery guys break his back moving 50-pound dumbbells. There's the innovations happening around us. You just got to stop and watch it. Not trying to be pithy or anything, but
no, it's a great point, Dan. I mean,
yeah.
I'm listening to this, both you and Claudia, and I'm thinking one, it's reminding me of earlier last week when I said I am kind of falling in love in a weird way with logistics, and I don't know enough about it to fall in love with it, but I'm more cognizant than I think I've ever been in my life. Right? You kind of made allusion to it before. You said, a lot of people probably lost sleep for you guys to be able to deliver the products the way you guys are, but you don't feel it personally in that way because you haven't been the one responsible for doing it. And it's kind of one of those things of you're only going to feel it when it's broken, right? It's one of those you need the air, you need the internet type of thing. And I think you're absolutely right on the front of we're all going through this experience together. This isn't a tsunami or a Katrina. Katrina affects one portion of the country at a time, or Sandy had different impacts in our area, Superstorm Sandy in different areas. And then over time, different levels of communities came back. This was a fairly immediate thing across the globe. And in that time, there was very little time to prepare. And then we're all thrust into a fairly equivalent situation, right? And then we have to make do without a rule book to figure it out. And I think that's why people are turning obviously to each other and to the internet and to search to understand it. I think what's going to be interesting on behalf of search marketers like ourselves is to tease out what is unique to this moment in time versus what will be moving forward. And that's where I think, the KPIs, if somebody's going to tell you what your goal for SEO looks like next year based on this last 3 weeks of data, impossible. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to hit those same numbers. I mean, God bless you guys if you do, but it's untenable, right? And you have to make sure. And I think we haven't talked about that on the show, but almost the identification period of very much recognizing what was COVID specific versus what you would have been getting, or to the converse, a drop that you would not have been getting. You don't want your goals to be set year over year in that way, because that will be very painful.
I mean, it's a snapshot in time, and everyone has to realize that, however, hopefully not too much longer this lasts, those set of months should, you look back and be like, hey, listen, there was a global thing happening then, and we want to make sure that we plan properly.
Yeah, and so I was having a conversation with a colleague earlier who works in a clothing business, and it's actually creating an interesting opportunity for him around education. So it's sort of medium-sized business, but their e-commerce expertise isn't great. One of his biggest challenges is, he knows what he's doing, he's a capable guy, but people haven't fully embraced e-commerce. So of course, they've got no bloody clue about SEO, because for some reason that always seems to come last rather than first. And the same terms like going, you've got people, they've turned off email, they've turned off PPC, they've got a level of remarketing in place, but they're looking to SEO because they're still thinking of SEO as a marketing channel rather than the byproduct of doing digital right. And I said to them, like, so they're getting questions going, well, why is the traffic down? They're going, we know that people aren't looking for dresses, but why are visits down to dresses from SEO? And I said to him, like, well, you just need to help people put together the things that they all know, because actually they've got the answer already, they've got all of it. But for him, the opportunity in this is to educate and to use this to go, right, he's been trying to educate people anyway, and been doing a good job of it. But obviously that's piecemeal and it takes time, where he's actually got an opportunity now to hit every category manager in his business and go, right, the impressions don't exist for this, because no bugger is buying clothing unless it's loungewear or undies. But that's what people are buying. So he's got a great opportunity with that to go and do more and to do better, but everything else, the market's fallen away. And as we all know, SEO, you can only capitalize on what exists. But the challenge for him is making as many people in his organization realize that as quickly as he can. So to that point around planning, Pat, I think it's also a great opportunity to educate your businesses if they still don't get SEO and what it's doing and how the levers of it and how it fits in. What better time to help them realize than when everything's gone batshit? Because it's only at that moment in time it's really going to stand out, and you can actually really help them to get it.
I think no, you blocked. You didn't mic drop. It's just I heard audio issues with you, and I don't know if everyone else did. By the way, raise your hand. I got a big. It wasn't just me, right? Okay, because you were making the best part of your point, and I'm thinking I was thinking this is going to be a cool clip when we clip this out of the show. This will be like a very nice clip, and I'm like, okay, just make sure you don't say anything over what he's saying because this is perfect. And then I'm like, oh yeah, he definitely froze. And so we're all kind of like, it was awesome. But
the summary of that
last part of your point, the last 3 seconds of your point,
was perfect time to educate your business because everything's gone batshit. Now's the time they're going to actually be able to learn those lessons.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we've been saying on the last few days here is that, after this, I would imagine that a lot of people are wishing they invested in SEO, or at least learned more about SEO and how it relates to their business probably a little bit earlier, than they had now. I think a lot of people know that, they wish they had that engine kind of churning for them. And I think post this, it's going to be interesting to see, because I think that there's going to be a little bit of a boom for SEOs, after this, just bigger companies that maybe just didn't want to invest in, or maybe only had half a person or a quarter of a person focusing on it, will all of a sudden have full teams dedicated to this, just in worry that something like this would happen again. I don't think it's going to be one of those things that just easily gets cut out. For us, of course, a big worry is always like, are people just going to freeze their budgets for SEO, and put it back into paid media to try and catch the eyeballs of people who are at home more searching, right? Because search, demand will go up because everyone's at home. And, probably we've, up until this point, we've kind of seen the opposite, where we're having really interesting conversations with a lot of folks who are like, hey, listen, like, we got to invest in this now. We probably should have invested in it a long time ago, but here we are. We want to make sure we don't, it's not like a miss the boat thing or capitalizing on it, nothing like that. More just like, hey, we really kind of missed the boat on when we were, we should have invested in this a couple of years ago at this point. And, now we're in a little tough spot because of this thing that just came out of nowhere and knocked everyone on their ass.
Yeah, and do you know what? The single best thing that happened to me in our career was summer of 2015 when we lost all our traffic. Now, some of it we knew at the time, saying this growth is going to go, this growth is going to go, and lo and behold, it did. But a whole load of other things that weren't right. That was the best thing that happened and really set my career up, because sort of faced in it and worked through, and actually we created some pretty good stability, and it continues to be the backdrop for how we educated the business and what matters to us as well. So for those businesses that are having that realization, going, actually, yeah, it's an opportunity to do something different. And I think the key thing for me is to make sure that we don't end up in a situation where you get a lot of those snake oil salesmen that we see around this industry continue to turn a quick buck from just tactics that, yeah, maybe they do work, but they're spam, they're dodgy, they're not going to create a sustainable business, because that's what SEO is, right? It's about building society level of sustainability, not just for traffic from Google, but so customers can shop. And I like your vision, Pat, and let's hope that comes through. And I think more forums like this where people are actually sharing about what's going on in SEO rather than reading some of the articles that come out from some of the reputable blogs in the business. That seems like a good thing.
Yeah, you know what's really interesting, Dan, is that I've noticed a few quick things that are worth pointing out. One, I'm wondering, and actually I'll ask this to Claudia. Claudia, have you looked at whether or not you have more or less mobile traffic coming to your site right now? I have a theory.
That is a really good question. I actually haven't.
I have a feeling that mobile has gone down tremendously, because I think people were at work using mobile.
Or on their commute.
Right. I think at home, you have your if you have your setup, you're just going to do the search on your computer.
I haven't seen any data for our site in particular, but I've seen some broader data about internet use that was showing that desktop and mobile both saw a big increase. It wasn't
both were seeing an increase. Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking you're not as remote, right? Like, so you really don't need the phone in the same way you would have needed it in the physical office space.
And I think there's a time thing there as well. In the past, we've seen people, they're either at work and they've got a desktop and they're doing a search there, or they're at home and they're not using their computer, they're using their mobile because it's easier to handle and they don't have to set up a whole laptop. And I think with people working from home more, the laptop's also there and available. You know, maybe it's at the end of work or it's during making dinner or something and the laptop's still there on the table. I think there's probably going to be more out of hours desktop use.
That's a good point.
We've seen it in the past.
That's a really good point. The hours might flip around, almost like I try and Phil every night. I make a promise to myself, forget my wife, but I make a promise to myself that I'll actually leave the computer in the office space I've devoted, and then I'll only use this moving forward. And it never happens. It still ends up coming with me later. But Dan, to the point you and Pat made, real quick, if you go look on Google Trends, and we can share a few screenshots of this, and look for SEO related terms, literally SEO related terms. So SEO agency, SEO services, they've actually all started to peak during this time. So I think what's really interesting, and I think save yourself the time now that you'll have to put in later, is if you're seeing these bellwether terms occurring in your business right now, mark them, flag them. Later, you'll be able to assess how the search volume changed for those terms, so that you can tell the full story to the business in that very educational, because I think there's an educational moment now, and I think there'll be an educational moment later. And it'll be later, everyone will be willing to also listen to you, because it'll be like, hey, remember when we all went through that thing together? Just like they understand search in regards to, oh yeah, that's the thing I personally do on Google. That's how you can first start your conversation with any layman about SEO is, you know, I deal in that thing you do every day, right? So this will be when dealing with that thing we all went through, we all know what happened to our business, whether it was good or bad. Then you'll have SEO data to confirm or deny that story, right? Or interesting findings of that sort. So if right now you're going through and finding these things, I guess flagging them along the way to make sure you can go back to them later and fully analyze them once this is over, from pre to post, I think is going to be fundamental. So getting a good snapshot along the way also is going to save you a lot of work later digging through analytics and trying to figure things out.
Yeah, it's a real good shout. I mean, I guess to your point around trying to figure it out later, with the swings we've seen for businesses both positive and negative, it's going to be pretty easy to find that data afterwards. But it's a great point, because I think the thing here is you're talking about an educational moment now and an educational moment later, and I get it. These are like hallmark moments. But I think what hopefully will happen for a lot of our peers around the industry is they realise that actually our job is one of continual education. You have these hallmark moments, but that continuing to learn something, continuing to have something to share around how we do e-commerce better can only be a good thing, right? It's about having interesting conversations with people and learning what you can from what's around you. And whether it's people learning guitar or languages or whatever now, hopefully they'll take that thirst for new learning, and we can go out into our businesses and share the good word of e-commerce.
That's a good point. It's very evangelistic of you.
Yeah.
Coming from the chief evangelist.
Well, from what you're saying, it sounds like now I should be brushing up my CVs. So,
no. What I'm saying is,
I'll put my contact details down here, and
all I'm saying is, I think I'm gonna have to do this at almost every show from now on. Pat's gonna be like, "Don't do this." Boo. That's my watermark moment in the show to ensure that it's not a deep fake. If you didn't catch that reference, go back to the Ross Simmons episode of yesterday, and you'll get the reference. So, we're coming up on time, guys. I really appreciate everything you guys have told us and shared. I feel like I have a better sense of what the heck's going on across the pond. I'm really happy you have that distributed model. I mean, that's a godsend, and I think that's something incredible. Really cool, and something I think a lot of businesses, frankly, are going to have to learn from. You guys are really lucky to be in that position, and I think you're right. All businesses are going to have to evolve in their brick and mortar statuses, and if they're gonna keep up, whether pandemic or just the expectation of consumers moving forward of what is open and what's available, your brand is going to have a lot of kudos for being there for people when they needed it. So we really appreciate your time. More Claudia than Dan, but that's just typical. Sending you both all the love, health, and happiness to your side of the pond. And thank you all for joining us. Tomorrow we'll have Michael Brew on from previously from Acronym, now from the Brew Group. He'll be getting into why SEO needs to be first moving forward. So thank you guys all so much. And
thank you for having me.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Claudia.
Thanks, guys. See you then.